The first time Nadia Chen saw the woman, she was standing in Marcus Rivera's kitchen at 1 a.m., wearing one of his shirts. Nadia had let herself in with the key he'd given her 3 months ago, the key that was supposed to mean something. She'd come because he hadn't answered her texts in 6 hours, and in Marcus's line of work, 6 hours of silence could mean anything. A stakeout gone wrong, a client in crisis, or worse. The apartment was dark except for a single light above the stove. Nadia's heart had been racing the entire drive over, imagining every terrible possibility. But as she stepped into the kitchen, she found something she hadn't prepared for. A woman, barefoot, making tea like she belonged there. She was older than Nadia, possibly in her early 30s, with dark circles under her eyes and a scar along her collarbone that disappeared beneath the collar of Marcus's shirt. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she moved through his kitchen with the kind of familiarity that only comes from time. The woman turned, startled but not afraid. She set down the kettle and studied Nadia with an almost sympathetic expression. "You must be Nadia," she said softly. Nadia's throat went dry. "Who are you?" "I'm Elena Volkov." She said it like Nadia should already know. Like her name was supposed to explain everything. It didn't. Nadia heard footsteps on the stairs. Marcus appeared in the doorway, barefoot, his hair disheveled, wearing sweatpants and nothing else. His expression cycled through surprise, guilt, and something harder to read, something that looked almost like resignation. "Nadia, I didn't think you'd come by tonight." "Clearly." He stepped between them, his voice low and careful. "It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" He didn't answer immediately. He just looked at Elena, and Elena looked back, and in that silence, Nadia felt something crack open inside her chest. It was the kind of look that spoke of shared history, of understanding that didn't need words. "She's a witness," Marcus finally said. "I'm protecting her." "From what?" "People who want her dead." Nadia had known Marcus was a private investigator when they met. She'd walked into his office 6 months ago looking for help finding her friend's missing brother, and Marcus had taken the case when 3 other investigators had turned her away. He'd found her friend's brother in 2 weeks, alive, hiding from gambling debts, but alive. He'd saved that family from falling apart. And somewhere in those 2 weeks of late-night phone calls and strategy sessions, and the moment he'd delivered the news that her friend's brother was safe, Nadia had fallen for him. She'd known his work was dangerous. She'd known he took cases other people wouldn't touch, cases that blurred lines, that put him in rooms with dangerous men and information that could ruin lives. She'd accepted that. She'd even admired it. He was the kind of man who didn't look away from hard things, who stepped into darkness to pull people back into the light. But this? A woman living in his home, wearing his clothes, looking at him like he was the only solid thing in a collapsing world? This felt different. "How long has she been here?" Nadia asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Marcus hesitated. 3 weeks. 3 weeks. 21 days. And he hadn't told her. Hadn't mentioned it once during their dinners together, their weekend plans, or their late-night phone calls where he'd said he missed her. Elena set down her mug carefully. "I should give you 2 space." "No," Nadia said, sharper than she intended. "I want to understand." Marcus rubbed his face, exhausted in a way that went deeper than lack of sleep. "Nadia, please. Not now. It's late. We can talk about this tomorrow." "Then when? When were you planning to tell me?" He didn't answer. And that silence told her everything. Nadia didn't sleep that night. She went home to her small apartment across town and lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every interaction she'd had with Marcus over the past 3 weeks. Looking for signs she'd missed. Clues that he'd been hiding something this big. She remembered the night 2 weeks ago when she'd suggested coming over and he'd said he was working late. The weekend before that when he'd cancelled their plans because of a complicated case. Last Tuesday when his text had been short, distracted, and he'd said he was dealing with something urgent. He hadn't been lying. Not exactly. But he hadn't been telling the truth either. The next morning, Nadia tried to go about her life as if nothing had changed. She went to her shift at the bookstore where she worked, smiled at customers, helped a teenager find a book for her English class, and restocked the mystery section. But her mind kept circling back to the image of Elena Volkov in Marcus's kitchen, calm and familiar, like she belonged there. Like Nadia was the intruder. That night Marcus called. "Can we talk?" "I'm listening." "In person." She met him at a diner on the east side of town, the kind of place where the booths had duct tape on the seats and no one asked questions. He was already there when she arrived, 2 coffees waiting, hers with cream and sugar exactly how she liked it. He looked terrible. Shadows under his eyes, tension in his jaw, his usual careful composure cracked around the edges. "Elena's testimony is the only thing keeping a trafficking ring from disappearing," he said, no preamble, no small talk. "She witnessed something she wasn't supposed to see. If they find her, she's dead. I couldn't put her in a safe house. They have people in the system, cops on their payroll. So I brought her to mine. For 3 weeks. Yes. And you didn't think I deserved to know? I thought I was protecting you," he said, meeting her eyes. "The less you knew, the safer you'd be. If anyone came asking questions, you could honestly say you knew nothing. Don't do that. Don't make this about my safety when it's really about your control." His jaw tightened. "That's not fair. Isn't it? You made a choice, Marcus. You chose to keep me in the dark. You chose her over me. It's not about choosing. Then what is it about? Because from where I'm sitting, you brought another woman into your home, gave her your clothes, your time, your protection. Everything you used to give me. And you didn't tell me." He leaned back, staring at the ceiling like the answer might be written there. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet and raw. "She has no one, Nadia. Her family disowned her when she went to the police. The cops won't protect her because half of them are dirty. Every agency I contacted said she was too high risk. If I don't help her, she dies. It's that simple. And what about us?" He looked at her, then really looked at her, and she saw something she hadn't seen before. Doubt. Like he'd been asking himself the same question and hadn't found an answer he liked. "I don't know," he said quietly. That honesty hurt more than a lie would have. Nadia stayed away for a week. She told herself she needed space, needed clarity, needed to figure out if she could live with a man whose job would always come before her. But every night she found herself wondering what Elena and Marcus were doing. If they were talking. If they were sitting in that kitchen together, sharing late-night conversations the way she and Marcus used to. If she'd already lost him. Her best friend Sarah didn't help. Over coffee on the 5th day, Sarah had been blunt. "You need to walk away. It's not that simple." "Yes, it is. He's living with another woman. I don't care what the reason is. She's in danger. So are you." Emotionally. "Nadia, you've been crying for 5 days straight. That man is breaking your heart in slow motion, and you're letting him because you think his reasons are noble enough to excuse it. What if they are?" Sarah had looked at her with something close to pity. "Then you're going to spend the rest of your life coming in second to his job, his cases, his need to save people. And one day you'll wake up and realize you needed saving too, and he was never going to be the one to do it." On the 8th day, Marcus showed up at her apartment unannounced. It was raining and he was soaked like he'd run from his car. "Elena's gone," he said. Nadia's stomach dropped. "What do you mean gone?" "She left. Sometime between midnight and 6 this morning. No note, no explanation. Just gone." "Did they find her?" "I don't know." His voice was raw, frayed at the edges. "I've been looking for 2 days. Checked every contact, every safe location we discussed. No sign of her. Nobody. Nothing." He looked wrecked, guilt and fear written across every line of his face. His hands were shaking slightly, and there was a cut on his knuckle like he'd punched something. And Nadia realized with a cold, sinking certainty, that whatever he'd felt for Elena, it hadn't been just professional. "You care about her," she said. "It wasn't a question. She was my responsibility." "That's not what I asked." He met her eyes and she saw the truth there before he spoke it. "Yes, I care about her." The words hung in the air between them, sharp and undeniable. "Do you love her?" "I don't know," he said again, and his voice cracked on the words. "But I know I couldn't let her die. Even if it meant losing me." He didn't answer. And that was answer enough. Nadia felt something inside her go very still and very quiet. The part of her that had been hoping, waiting, and believing that they could fix this. It went silent. "You should go," she said. "Nadia. Please. Just go." He left. And she locked the door behind him and didn't cry. Not yet. Because crying would mean accepting that it was over, and some part of her still wasn't ready to let go. 3 days later, Nadia got a call from a number she didn't recognize. "Don't trust him." The voice was female, calm and familiar, even though Nadia had only heard it once. "Elena." "He didn't tell you everything," Elena Volkov said. "And if you stay, you're going to get hurt." Nadia's hands went cold. "What are you talking about? Where are you?" "Marcus is looking for you." "I know. That's why I left." "I don't understand." Elena's voice softened, almost gentle. "The people after me, they're not just criminals. They're connected, powerful. Politicians, judges, and businessmen who've built empires on human suffering. And Marcus has been playing both sides." Nadia's blood went cold. "I don't believe you. You don't have to. But ask him about the deposit in his account 3 months ago. $50,000. Ask him why he really took my case. And ask him what he was planning to do with me when this was all over." "What does that mean?" "It means he's not the hero you think he is, Nadia. And I'm not the only one he's been lying to." The line went dead. Nadia sat there, phone trembling in her hand, her mind racing. She wanted to dismiss it, to believe Marcus wouldn't lie to her. But the timing, 3 months ago, right when they'd started dating. Right when everything had felt too perfect, too easy. Like he'd known exactly what to say, exactly how to make her fall. She thought about the first time they'd met, how quickly he'd taken her case when others had refused. How he'd found her friend's brother so fast, almost like he'd known where to look. How he'd been there at exactly the right moments, saying exactly the right things. Had any of it been real? She went to his apartment that night. He still had the key. He wasn't home. But his laptop was sitting on the kitchen counter where Elena had made tea all those weeks ago. She knew his password. He'd given it to her once, casually, when she'd needed to look something up. Like it didn't matter. Like he had nothing to hide. Her hands shook as she opened his banking records. And there was a deposit. $50,000. 3 months ago. From an offshore account registered to a shell corporation. The date was 2 days before she'd walked into his office looking for help. Her hands went numb. When Marcus came home 2 hours later, Nadia was sitting on his couch, the laptop open in front of her, the banking records still on the screen. He froze in the doorway, his keys still in his hand. "Tell me this isn't what it looks like," she said. Her voice was steady, but something in her chest felt like it was shattering. He closed the door slowly, carefully, like she was something fragile that might break. "Nadia, tell me you didn't take money to protect a woman you're in love with. Tell me this wasn't all a lie." "It's not a lie." "Then what is it? What is $50,000 from an offshore account 3 months ago? What were you doing with that money?" He sat down across from her, his face unreadable. For a long moment he just stared at the screen, at the evidence of whatever this was. "The money was insurance," he finally said. "If something happened to me, Elena would have been left with nothing. No protection, no resources, no way to survive. I couldn't let that happen. So you took a bribe." "I took a contingency." "From who?" He didn't answer. "Marcus." "From who?" "From her," he said quietly. Nadia stared at him. She paid you? Elena paid you $50,000. Her family has money. A lot of it. Old money, the kind that comes from industries you don't ask questions about. She was cut off when she went to the police, but she still had access to one account her grandmother had left her. She offered me everything she had if I'd keep her safe. If I'd make sure the people who wanted her dead never found her. And you took it? Yes. Without telling me? Yes. She closed the laptop, her hands shaking. I can't do this. Nadia, please. You've been lying to me for 3 months. You've been protecting a woman you have feelings for. You've been keeping secrets, making decisions that affect me, affect us, without including me in any of it. And now you're asking me to just, what? Trust you? Believe that this was all for the right reasons. I'm asking you to understand. I do understand, she said, standing. I understand that I will never be your priority. That there will always be someone else. Some case, some woman, some secret you think is more important than me. Some cause that matters more than us. That's not true. Then prove it. He looked at her, desperate, searching for the right words. But there weren't any. Because they both knew she was right. I can't, he said finally. I can't give you what you need. Not while she's in danger. Not while people are still looking for her. Then you've already chosen. She took off the key he'd given her and set it on the table between them. It felt heavier than it should have, like she was setting down more than just a piece of metal. Goodbye, Marcus. Nadia, wait. But she was already walking out the door. And this time she didn't look back. Nadia left that night and didn't look back. Not when her phone buzzed with his texts. Not when he showed up at the bookstore a week later, looking haggard and desperate. Not when Sarah told her he'd been asking about her, trying to explain. Some bridges once burned can't be rebuilt. 3 weeks later, she heard through a mutual friend that Elena had resurfaced. She testified. The trafficking ring had been dismantled. 17 people arrested, including 2 state senators and a federal judge. Elena Volkov was safe, relocated under witness protection, her face on the news as the woman who'd brought down an empire. And Marcus? Marcus had disappeared. Some people said he'd gone underground, chasing another case, another person who needed saving. Others said he'd left the city entirely, too burned by what he'd lost. Nadia didn't know. She didn't ask. She focused on rebuilding. On remembering who she'd been before Marcus Rivera had walked into her life and made her believe in heroes. She started painting again, something she'd abandoned years ago. She took a pottery class. She went out with Sarah and laughed until her stomach hurt. She learned to sleep without wondering if he was thinking about her. She learned to be alone without feeling lonely. But 6 months later she got a letter. No return address. Just her name, written in Marcus's careful, deliberate handwriting. Inside a single sentence. I chose wrong. I'm sorry. She read it once. Then she took it to the kitchen, held it over the sink and lit it with a match. She watched the paper curl and blacken, watched his words disappear into ash. Because some apologies don't change anything. Some choices can't be undone. And some loves, no matter how real they felt in the moment, aren't enough to build a life on. 2 years later, Nadia met someone new. His name was Daniel Park. He was a high school English teacher, steady and honest and refreshingly uncomplicated. He didn't have secrets. He didn't disappear for days without explanation. He didn't make her feel like she was competing for space in his life. He just made her feel seen. They met at a bookstore event. Ironic considering where she worked. He was looking for a recommendation for his class, something contemporary that would make his students actually want to read. She'd suggested 3 books and he'd bought all of them. Then he'd come back the next week and asked her opinion on which one had worked best. And then he'd asked her to coffee. It was easy with Daniel. Almost suspiciously easy after Marcus. He called when he said he would. He showed up on time. He introduced her to his friends, his students, and his whole life without hesitation. He didn't have parts of himself cordoned off, marked classified. He was just there, present, committed. On their 6-month anniversary, Daniel took her to dinner at a small Italian place in his neighborhood. Over tiramisu, he said something she would never forget. "I don't know what happened before me, and you don't have to tell me if you don't want to. But I need you to know something." He reached across the table, took her hand. "You're not invisible to me. You never will be." Nadia felt tears prick her eyes. Not because she was sad, but because she was finally, truly seen by someone who chose to see her. Not because she needed saving, not because she was convenient, but because he wanted to. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For being exactly who you are." He smiled, squeezed her hand. And for the first time in 2 years, Nadia felt the last piece of Marcus's hold on her heart break loose and drift away. 3 months later, Daniel invited her to a family dinner. His parents were visiting from Seattle, and his sister would be there too. She'd mentioned she was seeing someone new, but he couldn't make it tonight. "Fair warning," Daniel said as they walked up to the house. "My sister can be intense. She's been through a lot, and she's very protective of me. Just don't take it personally if she grills you." "What kind of a lot?" He hesitated. "She got mixed up with some bad people a few years ago. Almost didn't make it out. But someone helped her. A private investigator who protected her when no one else would." Nadia's blood went cold. "What was his name?" "Marcus something." "Why?" She forced a smile, even though her heart was suddenly racing. "No reason. Just curious." But when Daniel opened the door and led her inside, Nadia knew. She knew before she saw her. Before Daniel said, "Nadia, this is my sister." Elena Volkov stood in the living room, holding a glass of wine, her dark hair longer now, her face softer without the fear she'd carried 2 years ago. Their eyes met. And for one terrible, suspended moment, neither of them moved. "Elena," Daniel said, smiling. "This is Nadia." "Nadia, my sister Elena." Elena's face went carefully blank. "It's nice to meet you." "You too," Nadia managed. They shook hands. Elena's grip was firm, controlled. Her eyes said everything her mouth didn't. "Please don't tell him." The dinner was torture. Nadia smiled, made conversation with Daniel's parents, complimented the food. But every time she looked up, Elena was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. After dessert, Elena followed her to the bathroom. "We need to talk," Elena said quietly. "I don't think we do. I know what you're thinking. That I ruined your life. That I took Marcus from you." Nadia turned to face her. "Did you?" Elena's jaw tightened. "He made his choice. I didn't force him." "No. You just paid him $50,000 to make sure he'd choose you." "I paid him to keep me alive," Elena said, her voice sharp now. "Do you have any idea what those men would have done to me if Marcus hadn't helped? I was going to testify against people who traffic children, Nadia. Children. And Marcus was the only one willing to protect me when the entire system was compromised. And what about me? Was I just collateral damage?" Elena's expression softened. "I didn't know about you. Not at first. By the time I realized he was with someone, it was too late. I was already in his apartment, already depending on him. I couldn't leave. If I had, I'd be dead. So I was supposed to just accept it? Accept that my boyfriend was living with another woman?" "No," Elena said quietly. "You were supposed to do exactly what you did. You were supposed to leave. Because you deserved better than Marcus Rivera." Nadia stared at her. "What?" "He's a good man, Nadia. He saved my life. But he's also the kind of man who will always choose the mission over the person. Always choose the cause over the relationship. I saw the way he looked when you left. He loved you, but not enough to change who he is. Then why are you here? Why are you in Daniel's life?" "Because Daniel found me after everything fell apart. He was volunteering at a trauma center where I was doing therapy. He was kind to me when I had nothing. No family, no money, no identity. He helped me rebuild. And somewhere along the way, I found out he was my half-brother. Nadia blinked. What? My father had an affair 30 years ago. Daniel's mother was his teaching assistant. I didn't know Daniel existed until 2 years ago, and he didn't know about me. But when we met, when we realized the connection. She smiled slightly. He gave me a family again. And I'm not going to let my past destroy his future. So what are you asking me? I'm asking you not to tell him about Marcus. About what happened between us. Let him have this. Let him believe his sister survived and moved on. Don't make him see me as the woman who came between you and someone you loved. Nadia studied her face, looking for manipulation, for deception. But all she saw was exhaustion and hope and a desperate desire to protect someone she cared about. You really love him, Nadia said quietly. Daniel. He's the only real family I have. Nadia thought about it. About Marcus, about the past, about the woman she'd been 2 years ago who had almost let a man's secrets destroy her. And she realized Elena was right. Daniel didn't need to know. The past didn't need to poison the future. Okay, Nadia said. I won't tell him. Elena's shoulders sagged with relief. Thank you. But I need you to promise me something. What? If you ever do anything to hurt him, if you ever bring that world back into his life, I will tell him everything. And I will make sure he knows exactly who you are. Elena nodded. That's fair. They stood there for a moment, two women who had been destroyed by the same man, who had both survived, both rebuilt. He's not worth it, you know, Elena said quietly. Marcus. He's not worth what you lost. I know, Nadia said. I figured that out a long time ago. That night, lying awake next to Daniel, Nadia couldn't stop thinking about it. About Marcus. About Elena. About the life he'd chosen. And she realized with a strange, quiet clarity that she'd never really known him at all. She'd fallen in love with the idea of him. The hero, the protector, the man who stepped into darkness to save people. But she'd never seen the cost. Never understood that some people save others because it's the right thing to do. And some people save others because they can't save themselves. Marcus Rivera had been the second kind. A man who could rescue anyone except himself. Who could protect everyone except the people who loved him. Nadia? She'd finally learned to be neither. She'd learned to walk away. To choose herself. To build a life that didn't require saving. She looked at Daniel, sleeping peacefully beside her, his hand resting on her hip like she was precious. Like she mattered. And she understood. This was what love was supposed to feel like. Safe. Equal. Chosen. Not dramatic. Not dangerous. Not a constant battle for priority. His present. Back in his empty apartment across town, Marcus Rivera sat in the dark, staring at a case file he couldn't bring himself to close. Another woman in danger. Another life that needed saving. His phone sat on the table, Nadia's number still saved, still there, even though he knew she'd never answer. He thought about calling her anyway. Thought about trying one more time to explain. But what would he say? That he was sorry? He'd already said that. That he'd changed? They both knew he hadn't. Some people are born to save others. And some people are meant to be saved. Marcus had spent his whole life refusing to figure out which one he was. And now, sitting alone in the dark, he finally understood the cost. He'd saved Elena Volkov. He'd brought down a trafficking empire. He'd done the right thing. But he'd lost the only person who'd ever made him want to be saved himself. And that, in the end, was the choice he'd have to live with. 4 years later, Nadia Chin married Daniel Park in a small ceremony surrounded by friends and family. Elena was there, smiling, holding Daniel's hand as he cried through his vows. She'd kept her promise. The past stayed in the past. And Marcus? No one knew where Marcus Rivera was. Some people said he'd moved to another city, started over, kept saving people who needed him. Others said he'd finally stopped running and learned to sit still with his regrets. Nadia didn't know, didn't wonder, didn't care, because she'd learned the hardest lesson of all. You can't save someone who's determined to lose themselves saving everyone else. But you can save yourself. And that, in the end, is the only thing that matters. So, what do you think? If you were Nadia, would you have stayed and fought for Marcus? Or would you have walked away just like she did? Drop a comment right now. Stay or walk away. And here's another question. Do you think Nadia was right to keep the secret from Daniel? Or should she have told him everything? Comment. Tell the truth or keep the secret. If this story made you feel something, do 3 things for me. First, hit that like button. Second, subscribe to Unsafe Desires and turn on notifications. I bring you stories like this every week. Real, raw stories about forbidden love and finding yourself when everything falls apart. Third, share this with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to walk away. One final question. Was Marcus a hero who made an impossible choice? Or was he a selfish man hiding behind his work? Drop a comment. Let's talk about it. Thank you for being here. You are not invisible. You matter. And you deserve someone who chooses you. I'll see you in the next story. Thanks for watching.